Welcome back to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast on our two-part discussion on Legion Season 2. This is part 2 of 2, so if you have not yet heard our part 1, go back and listen to that, where we talk about the maze and chattering teeth. We talk about Carrie and Carrie, about codependency, and we came to the point where we were talking about Farouk and how abusers tend to be more parasitical, thinking that they're in a symbiotic relationship with those that they are sucking the life from, as it were, and that codependency there.
Oh, and also, I'm Kathy Covarrubias.
And I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
Yeah, just in case, you never know. We got to reintroduce ourselves.
All right. Well, and I wanted to talk about this on a different level, but I'm glad that we talked about Farouk to begin with for this one. I want to talk about that, as we talked about in part 1, that John Hamm vignette of delusion.
Yeah.
And the very first, I think it's the very first episode where it talks about how delusions and good ideas are born the same way. That they're born in an egg, as it were, and they have that egg symbology throughout the entire season.
And that creepy little black, chick
alien thing.
Yeah.
Which we still like. I'm not quite sure if it was reality or if it was all just kind of in David's head, kind of thing. But that's
the beauty of Legion.
Yeah, exactly. That's the entire show. You don't know if what you're watching is real or not. Mm-hmm. And that's, if a little aside here, one of the vignettes is about, and I think it might be the very first one, is about being able to teach somebody that the opposite color is that. And so he was trying to tell him that green was red and red was green. And so we see that being brought back in the final episode with that behind blue eyes montage thing. So, which, again, some of the best television I've ever seen. I'm going to call it the cold open because it was before the title. But then again, one entire episode was a cold open.
Yeah. That was a good episode too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We could have just done like one episode per episode for Legion.
We could have.
But one of the things that these vignettes did was talking about the delusion. And one of the, I think it was the final vignette, was about how that delusion can, like a virus, spread to other people. And I think this is something that Farouk, especially the Shadow King, used, was to be able to control the people that he was in charge of, being the king of his country or nation or whatever, that Professor Xavier stopped him from controlling any longer.
Yeah.
Like his whole thing about, well, how did Professor Xavier know that I was a bad guy? Like, he didn't know. He just assumed that I was a bad guy. And I think this kind of comes off of that codependency thing, is that for him, he didn't see himself as the bad guy. He saw himself as in a symbiotic relationship. He protected his people from the outside world. He protected them from everything else that was going on around them. And if he had mutants or whatever, he probably absorbed them. But that's I don't know where the backstory is going in the television show aside from the comic books.
Yeah. Well, and that's really, in real life, I've had friends who are in the same, like, similar situations to where their partners their partners feel like they are the protector. They are the one that needs to watch over, my friend. But it's in a very unhealthy, very, very bad way. Like on their days off, like, they'll go to my friend's job and just wait until my friend gets off work.
Yeah.
And just watch the door. That's not good. That's almost Farouk, Farouk. Oh my goodness, how do you say his name? Farouk level, like, creepy controlling. That's not good.
And the thing is, this is the way it is with most power structures. Is that when an abuser like that, and we don't know what abuse that Farouk went through when he was young and a child. But like this is the thing that we were talking about with the maze, was that they created the power systems in their own life to tell themselves it's okay, that I'm not really the bad guy here. And you see this.
I'm just trying to help.
Yeah, you see this in David at the very end, with him saying that I'm deserving of love. I'm not a bad guy. I'm a good guy. I'm deserving of love. I'm deserving of this, and that what I'm doing is not bad if it meets a good end. And see, this is the thing: is that in Farouk's mind, he also believes that he's the good guy. Mm-hmm. That even though he's done some villainous things, he still believes that he's doing something for the betterment of his people or himself. And this is that codependent relationship that is built into that power system, especially with places like I'm going to use unhealthy churches, for example. Is when you have a pastor or a priest who sees their role as being in control of a church, as seeing themselves as in power over a church. They see this kind of hierarchy of power. And, whether or not, the church kind of allows them to have that full power or not, it's not really true. That's not the way that the churches should be. The pastor or the priest is basically there just to make sure that the services, and that's the key word there, service, actually takes place. And when they get into that role of that, kind of codependency thing, is that they start replacing God with themselves. Mm-hmm. So, I see this as a God delusion, is what I'm calling it. Is that, and so that delusion that they've had that they're God, that they're in complete control of whatever it is. They're in complete control of the fate of the congregation. They're in complete control of their own lives, of fate, of whatever may happen, that it's there under their control. That it leads to this overblown ego, this overblown kind of God complex that a lot of pastors and priests and those who are in church leadership kind of have. Mm-hmm. And I'll admit to it, it happened to me as a youth minister. And youth ministers are kind of like middle management of a church. And I still got that God complex where I was in control of whatever happened to these youth. And see, I'm glad that I went to therapy. I'm glad that I discovered that that ministry life wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't healthy because it made me anxious. It made me, because I wanted to control everything. I wanted to control everything that happened to the youth. I wanted to control everything that happened with the youth programs to make sure that they went off smoothly, because I had been hurt in the past. Mm-hmm. I created for myself a maze to protect from a labyrinth, to use the metaphor from the show, because they have a minotaur and it's creepy, but... the creepy minotaur, and that the delusion is used as control for. It was used as control for me, and this is I've only met maybe a handful of priests and pastors in my life that don't let this affect them. I would one shout out to I'm not even sure if he's going to listen to this or not, but Father Eric, if he ever listens to this show, is he was like Professor Xavier in my life, was that he knew how to use his power. He knew how to keep it at bay. He knew how to keep it in check. That it was about service for him. That he was about doing the work of love rather than using it as power to control people.
Well, no, and he was very good about making sure that he saw other people's strengths, and instead of trying to squash them so he could stay in power, he tried to build them up.
Yeah, let them lead where they can lead.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And support them where he could. And that's why I call him like Professor Xavier. It was because that's what Professor Xavier does. Uh-huh. Like watching the movies or reading the comic books, Professor Xavier started the school of gifted youngsters to help them to kind of use their powers, to develop their power, to be able to fight for the good of humanity and mutants. Whereas Magneto was all about, like, no, mutants are good because we have power, so we should use that power.
Yep. And Magneto was more about, I'm going to teach, instead of like Professor Xavier being, I'm going to teach you how to use your powers so you know how to use them, like, responsibly. Magneto was more like, I'm going to try to help you learn about your powers so then I can use you.
Yeah. And see, in Legion, I don't think that there is a single person in the entire 2 seasons that has displayed genuine leadership. Has displayed kind of this level of leadership where they put themselves aside, in a sense, and they say, like, no, like, my own power doesn't matter. I will use it to support other people to develop their powers. Like the doctor lady.
Yes, I just had
Oliver's
her name.
wife.
Yeah, Oliver's wife. Last name Bird.
Yes. We'll call her Dr. Bird.
Dr. Bird.
Although I think she had a different last name.
Melanie.
Melanie.
No, it's Melanie Bird. See? Melanie Bird.
Oh, Melanie Bird. Okay, good. Dr. Melanie Bird. Is that, see, they had a codependent relationship too. A very codependent relationship where, like, she was absorbed in her husband's dream, and she makes mention of that, and that was part of her maze. And like, this is the thing, was that his power kind of overshadowed her power. That his delusion of being in control and overpowering, and even when he was trying to tell Farouk, "Oh, I'm going to kill you," like in the end, even when you're out of my body, when I'm no longer your vessel, I'm going to have the power over you. My power is going to be better than your power. And that's part of that sharing of delusion that the John Hamm vignette kind of talked about. And I think this is very true in abuser abusee relationships, is that they're going to try to have that delusion of control and power spread. Like, you'll see this in cults especially, where, like, the cult leader, they're in charge, they're going to protect us, they're going to make sure that we're okay. You can see this in the Hulu show, which actually just got canceled. The Order, I think that's called. It has Aaron Paul in it. Anyway, we watched it for like one season.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't think it. I can't remember the name.
But I mean, even going back to *Handmaid's Tale*, you see this with Fred. Like, when his power was questioned, his ego was questioned. That, he was like, "No, we're going to stop this good idea and squash it with the delusion again. Get the delusion back in there.
Yep.
That I'm in control. I'm in power. This is the way it should be."
Yep.
And, like, you saw this in David at the very last episode, was that when his delusion was questioned, that he did whatever it took to kind of make sure that that his delusion could remain in place.
Yep.
I mean, this is something that, like, even Lenny had that idea of power, in a sense, was that, like, she, I think, was like the head of her, like, drug organization or whatever it was.
Or I don't know if it was a drug organization. I just think it was just a group of friends who were just drug users.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she was, like, the head of it.
Yeah, for sure.
A cornflake girl or queen or whatever they call her. And see, this is the thing about this, is that we have this weird delusion that, these people are in power, that we have these delusions of these power systems that are in play, that we're not just all humans, that other people are better than us. And this is the thing, is that we're not better than each other. This plays into that whole inferiority complex that a lot of us have, is that, like, oh, whatever I'm going to do is not going to be as good as somebody else. And truth is that we're all humans. We're all struggling. That we're all broken. We're all kind of like this weird kind of place trying to get better.
Yeah.
And, like, just because somebody's a priest or a pastor or whatever doesn't make them
automatically better.
Yeah, automatically better. It doesn't make them a shepherd or whatever, like, you want to see them as. No. It makes him a sheep that happens to know how to guide other sheep.
Just a smarter sheep.
Just a smarter sheep in some ways.
Yep. Well, and I'd just like to point out, too, that the problem with, especially in the Western culture, with, like, individualism and, like, priding, like, it's, like, the ultimate goal to, like, be the leader and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. We
forget that in order to be seen as a leader, you have to have, like, a good second in command and a good, like fellowship as well, too, sometimes. But the second in command is almost as important, if not more important, because without that first person to follow you, you're not going to be a leader.
Well, I think this is why I think more cooperative organizations kind of end up doing much better, is because nobody's really the leader. That it's more a democratic kind of process of allowing everybody to kind of have their voice and allowing them to kind of say, like, bounce other ideas off of.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because when you rely solely on a single person, we see that it becomes that codependent relationship where you think that they're going to make the best decision for you, when in a sense they're going to make the best decision for themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And
it's this weird kind of thing where we're trying to, and I think this is the thing with Lenny, was that Lenny had her taste of power. Mm-hmm. And so she latched on to others with power so that delusion of power could kind of envelop her too, so she could be like, I'm the second in command, I have the power too.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Well, Lenny. Okay. So Lenny was one of the characters that I was talking about earlier, where, like, she was a villain in season 1. She kills a lot of people. Yeah. She aided in the destruction. But during this season, one of the scenes that, like, really kind of, like, hit me was when David and Farouk were, I don't know, sitting in a pool or something like that. They're, like, having a chat. Yeah. And, like, in the background, you see Lenny, like, constantly trying to, like, do different things to try to kill herself.
Yeah.
And she couldn't do it. Well, because, Farouk still had control over her. But you could see that she was struggling. And right then and there, I was like, oh, like, Lenny does not enjoy this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, Lenny clearly wants her freedom. And we learned that when she finally did get her freedom, it came at a cost. And it kind of messed her up even more. She ultimately, not her fault, but she became a tool. She even said, I was just a mask. Like, he just used me. Like, I was just a tool that he used to try to get at you, to try to, like, control you some more. And because when she was a tool, she did terrible things. Like I said, like, she killed all those people. Mm-hmm. She terrorized David. She terrorized Sydney. Like, she just was not good all around.
Yeah.
Like, during season 1, I wouldn't have said that she was a good person. Maybe at, like, the first episode of season 1, where we didn't really know, like, that Lenny was kind of, like, in his head, Yeah. And we later found out that Lenny wasn't an imagination, that Lenny was really a person. Anyway, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, we did see that Lenny was killed in the
when
first
David
second
went,
episode.
Yeah, when David kind of went berserk.
Well, it was when switched bodies, when he switched bodies with
Sydney.
With Sydney.
Yeah. Well, and afterwards, after all that happened, I think that's kind of why Lenny wanted out, was because after causing so much death and destruction, it does a number on you, surprisingly. Who would have thunk? But Lenny wanted out. She didn't want to do this anymore. But the problem with Lenny is that Lenny's excuse which is an excuse we have heard from a lot of people in the past who have done some very terrible things, was that she was just following orders. Like, it wasn't really me. Like, he was making me do this. We see that with the people who were part of the Nazi Party in World War II. When they came up with the trials and they were put on trial, a lot of them were like, it wasn't me. My commander made me do it. Whereas there has been recent studies that have shown that that's not the case.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead. You're
and not so recent studies as well.
Yeah.
There's a great episode by Radio Lab about a podcast that about what makes people do bad things, and one of them was about that famous study where people were shocking the person on the other room or whatever. It was not really shocking them, but it was an actor
pretending to be shocked.
Yeah, that most of the time that like 60% of the time they would still do it, but there were more studies done, and the more studies kind of showed that the person, when they were ordered to do something, that's when they absolutely said, no, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, like, you're not going to make me hurt this person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of goes along with the prison study. I can't remember the first name of the prison study. I was going to write it down. Everybody knows what I'm talking about because they made a movie about it, a terrible movie. But where...
And it was actually completely false.
Yeah, it was completely false. Like, it's been debunked. Like, it's a terrible study anyway. But what the professor was trying to prove was that people who are put in power and are given those orders are ultimately going to follow those orders no matter how bad they are.
Yeah.
And that is not the case. You can... Maybe there are... In certain circumstances where people have felt... like their family was threatened, or like they were threatened, that could be the case. Like if they were told, hey, if you don't kill this person, then I'm going to kill all of your family. That might have been when they wouldn't have said no. But there's still part of them is going to hesitate and not want to do it, though.
Well, and this is like what I said earlier in part 1 was that there's a part of you that does enjoy that. Especially if you see the other person as your abuser.
Well, and you see that in Lenny. Like, when she's going around and killing these people, she's dancing, she's singing, like, she's smiling and having a good time. She's clearly...
Not just a mask.
She's clearly not just a mask. Thank goodness she let the kids go, because I was going to be super mad if they ended up killing the kids. But, I mean, her claiming it was just a mask is not 100% true. She kind of enjoyed it. And you're right. When we have been wronged, and there are certain people who they just thrive on revenge. Yeah. Like, they almost enjoy having something bad happen to them because then they're like, oh, now I can seek revenge.
Well, and that's the whole plot line for The Punisher, which is why I don't think we were able to get through the first episode.
Yeah, because I just can't do that. Like, I feel like there's no point in revenge. Like, I don't get it. I mean, I know why people want to follow through with their revenge plots. Yeah. I get it. I just, for me, don't see the point. Like, it's not going to solve anything. It's not going to make the wrong that happened to you right.
Well, it's also not saying that you should allow those who are abusing you to keep abusing you. Yeah. It's saying that, or not seeking justice for them. Yeah. It's in a way saying, don't try to destroy their life like they destroyed yours. Yeah.
Go through the proper channels. Yeah. Yeah, don't just kind of make up your own and go all like
Punisher.
Well, I was going to say Punisher. I was going to say Carrie Underwood. Carrie Underwood on him. Where she goes, destroys the truck because he cheated.
The key of the car. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. Anyway, now that we're talking about that.
But, well, I think this is something that, like, this is the way that Farouk was able to manipulate. Well, you notice in the entire season, like, everybody was manipulating everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But like this is how Farouk was able to manipulate Sydney, was to be able to show her, see, look at David. He's enjoying this. He's enjoying getting his revenge on me, even though it's just Oliver.
Yeah. Gosh, poor Oliver. I kind of feel bad for his body. But anyway, when we are kind of given that taste of villainy,
yeah, it
can be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it can also be very draining because it's very hard to see people go through that kind of pain and suffering. Well, especially with people like us who actually have a heart and like have compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we kind of, in a way, coming from somebody who has acting experience, some of my favorite roles to play were the villain. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I liked it because it was an aspect of me that I'm just not am.
Well, also, in most cases, the villain can be the most real in a stage play,
mm-hmm.
where they are broken, but they are, you know, like, but also more real in it.
Yeah.
Here's a great example, which is also from that Radiolab podcast, but Othello.
Yeah.
Like the villain in Othello, he was really one of the most real characters in that entire play.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the great things about playing a villain, is that you're able to be kind of more of a real character.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there has to be some kind of a backstory to why you became evil.
Yeah.
Whereas the hero doesn't really get a backstory of why you became a hero.
Yeah.
It's like almost like that's people's default. Like default people are like good and heroes, which is a whole other thing, but let's not go off of that.
Well, I'm sorry. I was about to go off on another rabbit trail because I just realized something.
Oh, no. Say it real quick.
That's what happened with Westworld Season 2, was that we had the hero in Dolores, and then in Westworld Season 2, she became the villain.
Yep.
Where it was kind of like, I see where Legion is going in Season 3, is David's going to be the villain.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that's the way it kind of happens. And I think that's that famous line from, I think, Batman Dark Knight, is that you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah. Yeah. But the nice thing with stage plays is that it eventually ends. You know? You
can wrap it up in about 2 hours.
Yes. Well, and for me, as somebody who is more on the compassionate side and, you know, cries when other people cry and can't stand watching people get hurt on television, even if it's fake, which is why I can't watch Saw. It's so draining, and I just can't be a villain all the time. So I understand why Lenny, after experiencing what she experienced, was like, I just can't take this anymore. I gotta get out of here. But when her wish was finally granted, when she was able to leave his grasp, thinking that she was finally given a gift, not realizing what her actual purpose was, because again, he was still using her as a tool. She just didn't realize it at the time. But her wish to finally be free and to not be evil anymore came at a cost, because ultimately another life was taken. David's sister was essentially used as her vessel to come back into real life, I guess.
Yeah.
Out of Farouk's mind, to be released out of his grasp. And I just it made me think about just freedom in general. How some of the times, our freedom for certain things will often come at a cost as somebody else's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be that way all the time. For example, the freedom to marry whoever you want. It has not destroyed the structure of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
People still get married. Straight people still get married. It hasn't crumbled. That hasn't come at a cost. But I'm thinking more specifically, I'm going to get a little controversial here. We haven't had a controversial section in a long time, but
yeah. Because we kind of incorporated throughout the entire show.
But the Second Amendment, for example, people who are very very hardcore about they don't want their right to own any type of gun at all, no matter what it is, instructed.
Yeah.
Or disrupted or made harder to get. They firmly believe it is their right and everybody else's right to own whatever kind of gun, how many they want, doesn't matter. But that kind of freedom for that scenario comes at a cost. Mm-hmm. And we kind of have to outweigh the good and the bad when it comes to our freedoms. Me, I have never been a gun person myself. When I was younger, I kind of wanted to take like hunter safety and like kind of learn how to like hunt, but I never wanted a gun for the purpose of like protection or anything like that. It was more like, I just wanted a hunting rifle so I can shoot deer. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is completely different.
And I think that's a great way of saying that, we need to weigh the costs of our freedoms.
Yeah.
And in that, because now one of the costs of the Second Amendment now is our children. Mm-hmm. Our children's lives at school are paying the price for our freedom to own whatever gun we want to own.
Yeah. Well, it's everybody. Concerts, movie theaters, malls, like it. And that's kind of the reality we have to live in at this moment in time.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll change soon. Hopefully the younger generation, when they are able to vote, which is right around the corner, everybody.
Yeah.
Hopefully they will help us better direct that freedom to where people can still own a gun.
Yeah.
But the type of people who can and the type of guns they can have is going to be better regulated.
Well, I think this is part of that building the maze to kind of keep people out from that vulnerable spot. Mm-hmm. Is that this is one of those walls for a lot of those people, is that the gun is there to protect them from an imaginary monster, in a sense, that this delusion has been spread to them, mm-hmm. that that it's that something's going to harm them, and so they need that protection from whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so they're using that as a way to protect themselves, and so they're going to hold on to it because it's part of their maze. Yeah. It's part of what keeps them from being vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, and we ourselves know a few people who have taken it to the extreme. Like, there's a certain point in time, how many guns do you really have to own? Can you fire all those at the same time? You know what I mean? Like, how is this protecting you? But anyway.
Bringing it back to Lenny.
Yeah, bringing it back to Lenny.
Who uses a gun.
She does use a gun. But, well, no, she shoots it at somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does shoot it at somebody, but she also shoots it at a giant tuning fork.
Yeah. The choke.
Yes. With her cost of freedom, part of it unfortunately with her, she didn't really know what the cost would be mm-hmm. until it had already happened and it was too late. And her thinking that she could just go back and be friends with Lenny again just wasn't going to happen anymore. Heck, if your best friend came back to life and you're like, oh, how did that happen? And then you realize that they essentially had to sacrifice one of your loved ones to come back. Yeah, it would kind of ruin your day. Yeah. You know?
But David was okay with it afterwards. But, oh, by the way, that one episode with the branching paths of David's life was one of the most beautiful and heart-wrenching episodes. You felt for I think Amy, it was her name. Mm-hmm.
Amy's his name or her name.
And she was barely in that episode.
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful I love this show. I loved how they were able to use these more abstract concepts in a very simple way, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah. So if you have listened to our entire 2-part episode here, this is what we have, the principles in our parable here. We've talked about the chattering teeth and the maze. We talked about the power of vulnerability and how we kind of build these walls to keep people out of the inside of our maze, of what our desires are. We talked about codependency between Carrie and Carrie. We talked about the God delusion, as I called it, the delusion of control and how that delusion spreads. And then we talked about Lenny and freedom comes at a cost for Lenny and for that kind of idea there, kind of wrapping all of what we've talked about so far into that kind of part there. So that's what we talked about. We are working on a few things. If you heard earlier, we are going to be talking about The Magicians, season 1.
Also kind of sort of
next
with the book?
Week. Yes. We are going to do something different next week. We're going to talk about that in relation to the book as well, because we both listened to the book rather than actually reading it, because, we don't have time to actually read anymore as parents. And we also watched the complete season 1 of the sci-fi series for The Magicians, which, by the way, preview of next week, I am not a big fan of Quentin. But, he's the protagonist, so...
I think people who are like Quentin are the only people who like Quentin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic. I loved the book. I loved the TV series, which honestly, I kind of felt like both of them started slow, but we'll talk about that next week. Let's see. We've got Extinction coming up. We've got Mr. Robot season 3, How It Ends, 7 Seconds, the television series, Ozark season 2, Deadpool 2, First Reformed, Hereditary, Solo, the Star Wars movie, and Won't You Be My Neighbor, as well as Castle Rock on our list of things to get through. We still have a lot of stuff coming up, so...
and we'll probably add to the list some more.
We're going to be adding to the list some more, obviously. But if you have anything that you would like to say about today's episode or about future episodes that you believe that we should do, or any of our past episodes that you'd like to talk about still, please come and find us on social media. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can also send us an email at honestfaithconvos@gmail.com. Or you can also give us a call at our Google Voice number, which, again, I had forgotten to write down, which I am very sorry about. I will get that up somewhere. Just come and join our conversation. We'd love to have you. We'd love to talk more about Legion or any of our previous episodes, any of these things that we have watched and we've given blessings to. Maybe not the Defenders, because the Defenders was not our best episode. So, you can also find us on a group. We do have a group on Facebook, which we don't really monitor all that often because there's really only 2 people in it besides us. And one of them is Kathy's cousin. So,
hello.
So please come and join our conversation online. We would love to hear back from you guys. Also, if you listen to us on any podcast subscription service, almost all of them have a rating and review system. Please rate and review us. Please subscribe, and please tell your friends about us, because we would love to talk to more people about some of the things that we love, like Legion season 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.